3 exonerations per week. And I can't imagine going to jail for a crime that I didn't commit. I mean, is the prison system doing something to help these individuals once they go back out into society?
It's actually a crazy paradox, because if you're convicted of a crime that you did commit and you serve your time and you're paroled, when you get out, you get a parole officer, a probation officer, you get various different services that are designed, at least in theory, to help you reintegrate into society, right, with some sort of counseling and, advice. If you're actually innocent, when you're released, you get nothing, right? You come out into a world that doesn't make any sense. It's moved on without you, right? Your family may have died or moved on, or who knows.
So you feel like people are actually punished even more with the stigma of having been incarcerated, whether or not they actually have committed the crime, and then they have no tools to cope when they're out?
Well, there's that, and there's also the stigma that I think many of us, consciously or subconsciously, look down on people who were formerly incarcerated. And that's changing now, and it needs to change. I mean, some corporations have, rules against hiring people who've been, we are a country that believes in this.
They've been exonerated.
Well, they say not, but like some of the exonerees will say, like, you show up at a job interview and you've been in prison for 16 years or 30 years, and they say they'll say they understand, but it's hard to understand,
I'm curious because stories are always more powerful than statistics, and the statistics you provide are absurd. But in all your years now working on this, is there a particular story that's moved you more than any other?
One is the amazing, alarming case of Nora Jackson, who's become almost like another daughter to me. Interestingly, she looks exactly like my biological daughter, so much so that people have suggested to me that I should check and make sure I wasn't in, right?
That is
unreal. A friend of mine was like, you better make sure you weren't in Memphis 31 years ago. I was like,
unreal.
I don't know. So the resemblance is crazy, and Nora's story is so, it's so heart-wrenching. I mean, her own lawyer told me that she had to pull off the road when she was listening to the podcast because she was crying so much. But she was convicted of murdering her mother, who had been stabbed 50 times. And this was so bizarre. First of all, her father, tragically and coincidentally, had been murdered 16 months before her mother. Her mother was a successful bond trader, triathlete, had everything to live for. And Nora was convicted in spite of the fact that she had no blood on her, right? Now try stabbing somebody. No, don't do that. But I was going to say,
Think about that.
How's that going to work, right? How are you stabbing somebody 50 times you have no blood on you? Her manicure was perfect. No, her nails were great. There was none of her blood or DNA at the crime scene, which was her mother's bedroom. She had found the body. This poor girl's now an orphan with no brothers and sisters, and the system caves in on her and suffocates her and sentences her to, spend decades in prison. Her case was the prosecutorial misconduct was so egregious in her case that the Tennessee Supreme Court overturned her conviction 5-0 and called out the prosecutors for gross misconduct. And she got out after 11 years. And, it was just a brutal, brutal experience. Imagine 18 to 29 in prison, and after losing her parents. So if I do nothing else in this life but make a difference in the lives of a few people like Nora Jackson, then I feel like I will have succeeded.
Well, clearly you've been doing just that. And you know what? That right there, that story alone tells me why you've become so passionate about helping people wrongfully convicted. I applaud you, Jason. I say keep up the great work. And he's got a podcast. It's called Wrongful Conviction. And although I haven't listened to it, you were telling me this is one that I'm looking forward to listening to, because I think that highlighting these stories is so important, and keeping the word out too, because we do often judge people once they've been incarcerated and they re-enter the real world. It's hard not to judge them. But I think these stories alone should tell us exactly why we shouldn't do that. We're going to have a link to his podcast on our website. Keep it up, Jason.